support the Grand Challenges Africa initiative in the climate and health, artificial intelligence and reproductive health. Championing Africa-led scientist-driven solutions, Dr. Doris has been instrumental in designing Catholic funding models that not only de-risk early innovation, but also build resilient ecosystems, mobilize government co-funding, and connect local breakthroughs through global scale. Dr. Doris, I'd like to provide you the word a little bit as well.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you for the warm introduction. The doctor is yet to come, but it's in the pipeline. So thank you very much. Also to the members that have chosen to participate in this session. I'll be talking about the Science for Africa Foundation, where I'm based. As introduced, my name is Doris Wangari. I'm a Senior Program Officer for the Science for Africa Foundation, and more specifically under what we call the Grand Challenges Africa Initiative. So I'll spend a bit more time on that. Okay. Yes, it's moving. So our tagline at Science for Africa is from science to impact, and I'm hoping that through this presentation, I will show you how this piece of work pans out. The Science for Africa Foundation is a Pan-African organization that is Africa-led and Africa-based. We're based out of Nairobi, Kenya, but with a, again, Pan-African mandate working across the continent. Our work is on supporting, strengthening, and promoting science and innovation around this ecosystem. We exist to ensure that science and innovation are not peripheral when we are talking about Africa's development, but central drivers of inclusive growth and resilience as well as prosperity. We have three thematic areas that I will be showcasing in terms of science, health, agriculture, and climate change. And our mission, as you can see, is to catalyze and strengthen the Africa's science and innovation ecosystem. Our work, as we'll see, pans out across a continuum from discovery stage, translational sciences, as well as science and policy engagement. And this is how then we have the tagline, from science to impact, through that continuum. Our focus areas are, we have what we call the 5 Ps. So we look at people, the kind of people that we would want to invest in, the talent as well as the leadership. We also focus on early career researchers, looking at also the underprivileged communities, underrepresented groups, women, as well as even the next generation as well. We also look at places. When you look at the African continent, 54 countries, we try and support the various research institutions as well as build them in terms of infrastructure to that. So we thrive in terms of ensuring that innovation can be sourced from anywhere within the continent. The other P is policy, and here we advocate for coherent, evidence-based. From the research that fund, we try and ensure that we align in terms of the continental priorities that are there. For products, a lot of the research that we fund, especially under Grand Challenges Africa, we try and support, again, across that continuum to come up with products that are scalable to address the challenges within the 3 thematic areas of health, agriculture, climate resilience, as well as environment. Our key aspect as well is to forge partnerships in terms of building global and regional collaborations, and we mobilize governments as well, and various funders, various private sector partners, so that we can be able to create a lasting ecosystem for science. When you look at our footprint, we have worked in over 40 African countries supporting various projects, and that links the local challenges to global opportunities for African researchers. As you can see, this slide highlights 3 thematic areas that I alluded to, and we have given ourselves a target by 2027 to have mobilized over 250 million USD in terms of grant awards. Currently, we are at about 180 of that, so a short journey ahead that lies. When you look at how our programs are set up, we have 4 portfolios. The first portfolio is on the leadership development art. So one of our flagship program is actually called Deltas, Developing Excellence Through Leadership, Transformational Leadership in Africa. And they're doing various amazing work where you find we use the hub and spoke model. For example, you can have a researcher based out of Nairobi, but working with various institutions across Africa, for example, in South Africa, or even in Western Africa as well. And within that, there's a cross-mentorship that takes place. There's cross-collaboration. There's even sharing of the knowledge, sharing of infrastructure as well. Within the second portfolio, which is what I will be focusing a lot around, and this is more on the Grand Challenges Africa. This is the science-based portfolio, which where we have the science, innovation, technology, science, innovation, translation, and entrepreneurship arm, and Grand Challenges Africa falls under that. We do have other portfolios around solutions for emerging global priorities, like pandemic preparedness, as well as even how we do public engagement and engaging with society to that. So allow me then to focus on Grand Challenges Africa. It is an African-led initiative that seeks to focus on accelerating innovation. And this is aligned towards the Sustainable Development Goals. As alluded to, we have a 3-tier model where we have the seed, typically for about 100,000 USD, towards a period of about 1 to 2 years. And then we have the transition to scale, typically for about 3 to 5 years, for a period of, an amount of about 200 USD, and then scaling after that, so entering into the market, so support in terms of how we can support that innovator. And within that phase, it can take between 5 years towards an amount of about 500 to 1 million, depending on the kind of innovation. We had a very nice conversation yesterday where we were talking about what defines a startup, and sometimes a lot of this can stall within that pipeline within the ecosystem. When we look at the membership of this Grand Challenges family, we have the Global Grand Challenges, which is managed by the Gates Foundation. USAID was a former partner within this, key to include them in that, as well as the Grand Challenges Canada representation. We also do have regional Grand Challenges, where Grand Challenges Africa is based, and we have as well within India and Brazil, showing the full length of this global partnership that we do have. Within Grand Challenges, we do have various country Grand Challenges in Africa. We have Rwanda, we have Malawi, South Africa, where we are, Ethiopia, Senegal, and most recently as well, we have Nigeria that joined this family. So we are at 8, and trying to also mobilize in terms of what we have seen with this model, if we can bring on more national Grand Challenges from the African countries. Our successes so far in terms of what we've done, specifically for Grand Challenges Africa, we've supported in terms of water, sanitation, and health, and more importantly around climate, when it comes to climate and agriculture, climate and health, collaboratively, even as a family, we've come together and done joint calls where we mobilize for resources around that. And even in other areas within maternal and newborn, as well as drug discovery at that. So when I was asked to talk about this session, I felt that it is important for me to highlight what has worked very well in terms of the grand challenges network and the family. I think what I wanted to share is that we have 3 proven approaches that truly stand out to that. And we've seen that this can be replicated to various ecosystems to ensure that there is flexible catalytic funding within institutions and strengthen and ensure that there is long-term impact of that. So one of them is that within the support that we give to the various grand challenges, national countries, the funding, it could be seen as small, but it does catalyze when we do matched funding in terms of allocation to government. And it's proof that early donor dollars can truly unlock African government own investment, because they do have to have a budget line within their government that would be allocated to science and technology to that. And this we've seen working out very well in Malawi and in Rwanda, where we were able to set up that piece of work. And we worked in partnership with the African AUDA NEPAD, African Union, to ensure that the governments would be able to see the benefit that comes out of it. Sorry, is it able to go back? I wanted to also highlight, in terms of some of the African-led consortia, within the first pillar that I presented of our matrix, where we have leadership, we have the Deltas Africa. And I mentioned about the hub and spoke model that is there. I think what we've seen with this is that through investing in leadership within the African continent and structuring it in a way that we have multi-countries working within that, we've created regional centers of excellence, and there's even the peer-to-peer networks that continue to facilitate major funding long after we've given the initial grants. So this is the kind of ecosystem building model that I feel more of Africa should expand on. On the other aspect that we've learned is on capacity and governance. And here is when we look at, even when funds are available, even when the grants are available, we find that a lot of the African countries, institutions, they need the right systems to absorb and manage those funds. So we are training when it comes to grants management, discussions on intellectual property, institutional governance to that, to enable them to tap into more resources that are available. And I believe without these capacities, various opportunities would be lost to that. We do have shared platforms, like I have alluded to, where we are able to coordinate within those common platforms and do joint calls, for example, the Grand Challenges Africa. And this has supported in terms of alignment for various innovators. They're able to move faster and scale across Africa, and it has shifted in terms of those isolated projects that we've been seeing and build a more innovation ecosystem to that. Some of the lessons that we've also seen, one of my biggest takeaways from this piece of work is that within giving flexible and small, in quotes, grants, risk-tolerant capital, typically of about 50,000 to 100,000 USD, it can truly make a transformational difference. We give innovators the space to experiment, to adapt, and even test. They're able to de-risk that innovation to that. And we've seen how even with our initial funding, they're able then to gain credibility and visibility when it comes to unlocking more funding around that, and especially more from the various private investors as they move within the scaling tier, the model that I showed. But it's not enough, I think, to fund this project in isolation. We need to ensure that we follow on in terms of the success on capacity building ecosystems to make sure that the local institutions are strengthened, regulatory pathways are clear, and policy actors are also engaged. Finally, we've also learned that the most sustainable models are those that are blended financing pathways, where the philanthropic provides the seed capital and creates a runway within which then government can come in, commit in terms of securing legitimacy, and then private sector as well would also be integrated to drive the long-term sustainability and market adoption. Within this combination of the blended financing, we believe that it would be, an innovator in Africa would be able to scale to that. Lastly, within Science for Africa, we do pair capital with capacity development. We do not just give the funding. We try and ensure that we support you even in terms of the infrastructure that you would need as well. And I will end there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for this interesting introduction. Especially the governmental co-funding was something that attracts me, and especially on the fact that we can discuss this later and learn a little bit how the selection of the foundation looks towards and support projects based on the interaction between national-driven innovation agendas and also the grassroots initiatives, because not always aligned, and how to prioritize also the, let's say, and give importance to the local grassroots initiatives. But nevertheless, very, very interesting. I think the next speaker will be Dr. Connie Bolte. She's a multilateral affairs coordinator for the Belmont Forum, where she helps align funders and stakeholders to address sustainability challenges. With an interdisciplinary academic background in ecology and evolution, Dr. Connie knows how to channel her passion into science diplomacy and transdisciplinary research to connect innovation with societal impact. It's up to you.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be part of this important discussion on building the climate innovation pipeline. Today, I want to share how our experience at Belmont Forum, convening multi-country and multi-stakeholder, let's see if I can get that slide up. There we go. Research collaborations connects directly to the themes of this session. Those include identifying promising innovations, providing catalytic support, and designing partnerships that link local action to global ambition. For those of you who may not know us, the Belmont Forum is a global partnership of research funding organizations, international science councils, and regional and research consortia. Our mission is to accelerate transdisciplinary research that addresses the most pressing sustainability challenges of our time. What makes us unique is our collaborative funding model. We pool relatively modest contributions from multiple funders and channel them into collaborative research actions, or we call those CRAs. These multilateral funding calls focus on the themes that transcend borders, like climate adaptation, food security, oceans, biodiversity. Since 2009, the Belmont Forum has supported more than 200 projects, engaging over 1,000 academic and non-academic partners across 90 countries. But the real value lies in the bridges built between disciplines, across borders, and most importantly, between knowledge and action. As part of the Secretariat, I coordinate multilateral affairs, which means helping funders align on shared priorities, designing and supporting multi-country calls, and ensuring diverse stakeholders and their voices are heard throughout the process. I sit at the intersection, essentially, of funders, researchers, practitioners, and communities. I'm like a boundary spanner, some people have called it, translating across perspectives so projects can not only be scientifically excellent, but societally relevant. This gives me a front row seat at how small catalytic funds, when pooled and strategically designed, can unlock innovations that would otherwise never make it into the global pipeline. The theme of this session, unlocking small funds to accelerate and de-risk local solutions, is exactly what the Belmont Forum was built to do. By combining resources, we create opportunities for early stage, experimental, and community-based innovations to gain traction, while also connecting them to the science policy financing networks that they need. So our approach to designing multi-country, multi-stakeholder calls rests on 4 principles. First, co-creation. Funders come together and identify shared priorities while leaving space for local context and creativity. Second, flexibility. Calls allow teams of all sizes to participate, from local NGOs to universities to government agencies. Third, shared governance. So we have steering committees with funders, practitioners, and researchers. And these steering committees, they ensure relevance and accountability. Accountability is a key one. And the fourth is community of best practice. So funders come together, and with like-minded institutions, we develop best practices supporting transdisciplinary co-created research. For example, our Oceans CRA, one of our projects, was in Madagascar. And these scientists worked alongside local fishing communities to restore coral reefs. With merely 800,000 euros, pooled by Sweden, US, and East Africa, the project developed a new tool to restore coral reefs, which also restored biodiversity, improved fishery yields, and trained citizens to monitor the coral reefs long after the funding had ended. So it's a clear case of how pooled small funds can unlock innovation and create enduring community ownership. And that's just one project. One of the biggest challenges is aligning diverse stakeholder needs. Governments seek policy relevance. Private sector partners look for scalability. Communities prioritize immediate benefits. And researchers value rigorous evidence. Our model requires our proposals to the Belmont Forum system, to articulate benefits across these dimensions. We also emphasize integrating scientific, indigenous, and local knowledge to ensure relevance and legitimacy. One other project, an example I'll provide, it was called Salt Mind, and it focused on desalination, brine valorization. It brought together researchers, private industry, and regulators. For governments, it reduced environmental risk. For companies, it opened up new revenue streams. And for communities, it improved water systems. By aligning different needs, the project demonstrated how research can deliver both immediate benefits and long-term sustainability. To assess impact potential, because that's the big thing these days, right? Everyone wants to know what's the impact of the dollar, what's the impact, where's it going? We think in terms of scaling out and scaling up. Scaling out means replicating successful solutions across communities and geographies. Scaling up means embedding those solutions into policy frameworks and finance mechanisms. Both are essential. One effective approach is bundling local innovations through multi-country consortia. This de-risks investments by creating a diversified portfolio, rather than depending on a single fragile pilot. And it also helps translate local success into international visibility, bridging the gap between community-level action and large-scale finance or policy ambition. Again, a lot of our projects at Belmont Forum have pilots in different geographies and working with different communities, and that essentially helps us assess scalability. And we've seen projects that began as small catalytic grants evolve into recognized contributors of IPCC assessments, national adaptation plans, and regional development strategies. That's the power of designing for both innovation and impact. So to close, I'll return to our theme. Small catalytic funds, when pooled and aligned with community priorities, are the seedbed of climate innovation. They de-risk local solutions, build trust and evidence, and connect grassroots creativity to global systems change. That is the role the Belmont Forum plays, and that's why we see such alignment with today's conversation. By fostering transdisciplinary international collaborations, we help ensure that promising innovations don't stop at the pilot stage, but become part of the larger pipeline towards sustainability. Thanks.
Thank you very much also for this very interesting, also very clearly introduction to how the pipeline definition of the Belmont Forum look like. Also very particularly in which I also have some interest, is especially during your collaborative research action, the co-creation phase with funding stakeholders, and especially how the model of the Belmont Forum guarantees that there is a clear balance between the orientation, what the funders define, and how the beneficiaries of the impact demands. Because that's also something that we sometimes also face, so that's always very interesting to discuss later. I think the next speaker is an online speaker. It will be Mrs. Nadège Trosselier. It's not from here, I think. It's the climate technology specialist of CTCN, responsible for Africa, Commonwealth of the Independent States and West Asia, including the coordination of the AFSIA program. She works at the intersection of innovation and climate resilience, helping design and scale technical assistance projects that support local adaptation, early warning systems, and technology deployment. With experience managing multi-stakeholders initiatives and facilitating pathways from grassroots projects to larger finance mechanisms, she contributes to unlocking small funds for impact in vulnerable communities. Ms. Nadège, I hope you can hear us, and I hope you're on the screen. Yes, you're on the screen. Yes, please. The floor is yours.
Can you hear me well?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much for the previous speakers. I think we are going to complement each other, and all of us is offering opportunities for climate adaptation projects to be piloted or scaled up. So very pleased to be part of this panel, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'm working, as you said, mainly as a program manager for what we call AFSIA. We have many programs funded by the Adaptation Program, the Adaptation Fund, or by the European Commission, European Union. Today I'm going to focus on this AFSIA program, and the AFSIA program was initially co-funded by both UNDP and UNEP, each of us for $5 million, and we are moving towards the second edition of the program that will be funded by multiple of agencies, including WFP, as well as UNIDO, as well as two agencies based in the Pacific, SHREP and SLP, and all of us are working with different stakeholders, with different proponents. So, for example, in the case of UNEP, we are mainly working with governmental institutions. In the case of UNDP, they were mainly working with NGOs. In the case of UNIDO, they will be working with SMEs. In the case of WFP, they work in very target countries with businesses. But we all have the same goal, because the program aims at testing, piloting, experimenting climate technologies on the ground. That's the first. Then we try to demonstrate that these technologies, innovations, practices can enhance, can support, can increase the resilience of the vulnerable population. And third, we try to support countries in making sure that these technologies can be easily and quickly scaled up. And for this, you need policies, for example, you need frameworks, you need standards, you need to make sure that you have the enabling ground so that the private sector can easily build on. And maybe I could provide examples of what has been done in the past to start with, and then provide you with a description of the window that is currently open. So what we did in the AFSIA 1, and AFSIA 1 is closing now in between October and December 2025, October for UNEP and December for UNDP. And what we have done, I can explain through two maybe examples. First, Maldives. Did you know that Maldives import 90% of its food production, of its food? and that the very small quantity of food that is produced directly in the country is threatened by seawater intrusion, so that it is threatened by salt intrusion into the water, which is quite scary. So what happened is that the government contacted us, and we implemented in one of the islands of Maldives that is actually producing food, we implemented this drainage system. So let's imagine that you have big pipes that are on the ground, and these pipes prevent the salt water, the sea water, to enter this agricultural land. And this project will now be scaled up by adding on the top of this system a monitoring platform that will be able to evaluate the water balance, the level of the water, the quantity of water that is available on the ground. This will be done at governmental level. And this system will be able to send alerts to the farmers when the groundwater level is no longer available and should not be used anymore, because otherwise salt intrusion could occur. And this will inform the farmers that they need to rely on their rainwater harvesting system. Then maybe another example that I could share is an example of Burundi. And Burundi is nothing to see with Maldives, right? It's an inland small country in Africa, but they are still suffering from flood and from drought. And in Burundi, we have tested this very innovative technology that is a big, long rubber and inflatable snake. And because it is inflatable, you can easily store it in very small boxes. You can easily carry it and put it wherever you need it. But when we deploy this long rubber snake, which is inflatable, you can fill it with water. And when you fill it with water, it becomes a very strong barrier against flood that can protect land, but it can also protect houses and people. And this is exactly the images that you can see on the screen right now. But the magic of it is that whenever the flood has gone and you suffer drought and you're waiting for rain to irrigate your land, you can then use the water that has been filled in order to inflate this long snake and use it to irrigate. And this is a very simple, very cheap technology that can be used both in inland countries that's suffering from river flood, for example, as well as in the Pacific Island to fight against sea level rise. So these are two examples of technology that we have implemented as part of AFSIA1. We have also worked quite intensively on early warning system, because we know that the data and the quality and the quantity of the data that is available, mainly on seed and LDCs, are sometimes lacking. And because of this lack of quality and quantity data, it's difficult to forecast, it's difficult to inform timely and adequately the people against whatever floods or drought or danger. And that in order to improve this data and to have functional early warning system, you need to work both from the governmental side, but as well in country. And we have another example, for example, in Malawi, where of this cooperation between the communities on the ground, the beneficiaries, and the government. And it was again on water, because water is a big problem. And when it's missing, we're suffering. When there's too much, we are also suffering, right? So water is very key when you talk about adaptation. And in Malawi, they had the government had a platform, but the platform was not using accurate data. It was not real-time data, and the information was not reaching the community about flood or drought timely. So what we did is a cooperation through which the community with a very basic phone, not a smartphone, just a normal phone, can send SMS every day to the government entity, to the meteorological services, with the level of water. And one person has been dedicated in different communities, different villages, following the river. And so because the government now receives every day this picture that is treated by an AI before getting accepted by the government and integrated into the governmental early warning system platform, because they have this daily inputs, this daily data that are accurate because they're taken the same day by people that do it for free, because they know that they know the impact that this will have for their prevention, to protect their families and to protect their land. The government has been able to improve the quality of their system, and then the quality of their alarms by I think that the Minister of Environment of Malawi said something like it was the first time we had so good data and we were able to provide such timely and such reliable information to the population. So this is the kind of impact we can do. The grants that we are providing are also very small. We are talking of a maximum of $250,000. Usually the projects are implemented within a 12 to 18-month timeline. So they're very small pilots, short initiatives, but they still have this capacity to demonstrate impact, to demonstrate how technology can trigger change. Now, just to take a couple of minutes to maybe provide some lessons learned of this kind of this ATSIA 1 program that we are closing and transitioning towards ATSIA 2. We have identified that innovation takes time because you need to make sure that it comes with behavior change. And in order to come with behavior change, the training and the adaptation of the communities to these new practices and technology take time. We also identified that sometimes we lack the accurate monitoring system that will enable us in the long term to understand what has been the real impact of the project for the communities and how can we improve the current project. This is maybe due to the fact that project management cycles are not always structured in order to monitor post-implementation impact, right? For example, the program ATSIA, now it's closing, the first edition is closing, and we're transitioning toward ATSIA 2. And all the project that has been implemented under ATSIA 1 has been monitored while they were implementing, but now that the program is closing, we won't be monitoring them anymore, right? So how do you ensure, how do you learn from these experiences, and how do you make sure that you improve on whatever you have done and you monitor this impact in the next couple of years? So this is one of the challenges that we are facing. We also see that multi-scale funding is essential to scale up innovation and to foster the long-term impact. We believe that blended finance and diverse revenue streams are quite vital, and that it would be nice, something that we will try to do in the next adaptation fund 2 in the next edition, is to get the private sector on board from the very beginning, from the design stage, because otherwise we see that it's difficult to have them on board once the project is already quite advanced or maybe too advanced. Another thing, we have been working quite a lot with the countries, not on piloting technologies, but on creating this enabling environment I was mentioning in my introduction. Because if you have a technology that works, but you don't have any policies, you don't have any regulations, you don't have any business models, you don't have this national system of innovation that makes sure that all the actors are informed and that the rules has been settled, then it's very difficult for the private sector to come in, right? So we are also supporting countries in developing this business model that will be adapted to smallholder farmers, in developing this framework, these policies, these standards that will clarify what are the minimum requirements that the technology may respect in order to be acceptable for the country, let's say. So just to close, maybe, I would like to say that the ASIA2 project is still at sourcing phase. So we need to implement 60 projects. This is only the UNEP program, but as I said, we will be many implementing entities, at least 5, but potentially much more. These projects have a limited size. They can be both on the piloting of technology or on the enabling environment part of the coins. Our program from UNEP side will be closing in 2030, but some of the program will be closing a bit later, 2032, 35. So if you have a climate change adaptation idea project, and that you think that piloting it would be necessary, and you're looking for small-scale funding, please do feel free to reach out to us with your idea, and we will screen and evaluate and work with you to improve it and hopefully get to piloting it and implementing it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Nadesh. The next speaker I'd like to invite is Mr. Manda Rashaka. He's fund manager of the UK Pact South Africa at Palladium, where he leads efforts to support climate innovation and policy readiness. He previously served as a senior specialist for ESG and social impact at Vodacom, where he spent over a decade advancing corporate sustainability and inclusive development. Mr. Manda holds a degree in biotechnology and one in environmental management from the University of Pretoria, and he has led flagship programs such as Youth SDG Innovation Accelerator in South Africa and Kenya. He also contributes to non-profit boards focused on food security and sustainable development. So the next 7 minutes are for you, and I'd like to highlight that we try to keep within the minutes to guarantee that everyone can grab some lunch.
Thank you very much. I think our organization is a bit unique in the way in which we work. So as stipulated, I work for UK Pact, the PACT standing for Partnering for Accelerated Climate Transition. So a bit about UK Pact. So UK Pact is a fund that operates in many jurisdictions globally. And we are a demand-informed program supporting mostly, strictly actually government. So we provide technical assistance and capacity for accelerating climate transition within government spaces. And I hope to highlight how we bring in innovation in what we do. So in terms of the kind of support, so I've already said it's demand-informed. So government comes to us and says, we want to do this kind of project, or we would like to get this thing started because climate change is still relatively new within the government space. And we look into that based on our strategy that we develop for the country, and we respond accordingly. And we can respond either by placing an individual on a long-term basis who will provide that support and that capacity, because I think most of the time government wants to do work in the climate space, but it takes a long time to create the capacity. So we provide that upfront capacity. And we try and work in line with existing policy. And in some areas, we've supported policy development work within the South African space. So the objectives of UK Pact, very quickly, the program's overall objective, and I think this should make people happy, because usually we speak about climate change and people think about lost livelihoods, but our objective is to promote overall alleviation of poverty. So we want to address climate change, but we want to make sure that addressing climate change does not leave people people destitute. We do this in two ways. Directly by reducing greenhouse gases and therefore reducing the negative impact of climate change, and secondarily, we partner with countries by funding climate-focused activities to support growth, create sustainable jobs, improve lives of citizens, and empower marginalized groups. And as you will see here in our theory of change, we are a country-led program, so we do not impose, even though this is international donor funding, our own priorities, but we support the priorities the country has. We want to be transformational in the work we do. We are flexible to be able to make sure that our work fits into the greater ecosystem of work that's already being done, and we like to document, and we also look out for opportunities for learning. I think most key around this kind of work is making sure that you sustain your work beyond exit. So that's very important to us. And as you can see, GESI, which is gender equality, disability and social inclusion, is the underlying bedrock of the work that we do. In terms of where we work globally, where you will find the UK Pact Fund, it's in all those countries. But as you can see in South Africa, our focus areas currently are green hydrogen, clean energy, and municipal energy, which an area where we're doing quite a lot, and then climate policy and strategy. And I think climate policy and strategy is really the area where all the work begins, because I think without good policy, government can't really move forward. So in the policy space, we support policy development through our technical assistance, as well as helping government implement policy. So the most recent call for proposal, for instance, we are supporting the localization of the Climate Change Act by helping local municipalities and district municipalities find opportunities to implement. And in some areas, we're talking about revitalizing agriculture in a climate positive way. In some areas, we're talking about ailing economics where mines have closed down, and trying to find opportunities around renewable energy, thus emphasizing that job creation and social empowerment element of what we try and do. So to look at some of the work that we have done in the past financial year, to highlight three things. So last year, we were part of the group of funders that supported the development and promulgation of the South African Renewable Energy Master Plan, which the President signed into law earlier this year. And one of the difficult things which I think we've been asked to address as speakers is around making sure that you're not in it for the short term. And it's very difficult to convince funders to keep funding the same thing over and over again. But luckily, we've been able to convince our fund board to continue to support this, because now the policy is passed. Now we are supporting the PMU, which has been set up in the presidency, to ensure that now this Renewable Energy Master Plan goes into implementation in whatever phase that will look like. One of the things that happened, which was very, very interesting in this project, are the spin-offs that came out of it, and how, as a fund, we accommodated those spin-offs. So as they started working, they realized, okay, in supporting the policy, one key area that we're still lagging as a country is around skills. They convened a multi-stakeholder forum, and out of that came an app which connects industry with academia, so that in the academic space, the people that are teaching students know exactly what industry is looking for. This app has been handed over. It's now owned by EWCTA. We are supporting the integration of that app and the scaling of that app. It came out as a spin-off of this project. Another thing that we support as part of this project is market intelligence. So trying to find those opportunities so that funding can be directed, both international and local funding. And last year alone, through those market intelligence reports, we were able to mobilize £8.25 million within the renewable energy space. And that money was able to unlock 3 megawatts of clean energy. And this is just a highlight from one project. And then I've already spoken about the policy. In terms of current year priorities, we are supporting a green hydrogen feasibility study. So that is something that government would want to look into, but where does the capacity come from? So we've provided a consortium that is doing a feasibility study in the Eastern Cape, and there are interested takeoffs from the UK as well as Tokyo. So it's looking like that feasibility study will be ready for funding quite soon. That work concludes at the end of the year. In terms of other work, we have supported quite a lot of training within the municipal space. Municipal officials keep hearing about the fact that they can generate their own energy within the municipal space and connect that to the grid, but no one has developed that training. So we partnered up with the University of Pretoria, and they have interpreted materials and delivered training specifically for municipal officials around unlocking renewable energy within the municipal space. We are also supporting 6 public universities with green business plans, looking at safety of students, lighting at night, as well as reducing the energy footprint of those universities. And I think the thing that our fund is looking more for, especially now in a scarce funding environment, is we're looking for projects that are ready for funding. So as opposed to funding studies, as opposed to doing early stage innovation, we are looking at the latter stage for things that are ready for scaling, in order to help package for the market. And I think that's where the impact is, because mostly in the studies there's not a lot of impact. Impact is still downstream. And finally, I think I've already alluded to this, we are supporting Municipal Climate Change Act implementation in different municipalities within the country. We put out a broad terms of reference, which we were overwhelmed in terms of responses, and I think it is something that we hope to do going forward. So the policy has been promulgated, and now we want to support, with the support of DFFE, which is our Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, how that policy lives and is implemented within the municipal space. That, in short, is my introduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manda. The last speaker for the panel is, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Elaine Segati-Rios. She holds a PhD in language studies from the Universidade Estadual de Londrina and is professor at the Universidade Estadual do Norte de Paraná, Brazil. She serves as a coordinator of international relations for strategic project at Fundação Araçaria and leads the state-level program which promotes multilingual capacity among university communities. She has held leadership roles in Brazilian higher education internationalization networks, including as vice president of FABI and member of Abrauem International Chamber. But if the pronunciation is wrong, please correct me during your speech. Thank you.
So good morning, everybody. So good afternoon already, right? So I'm Eliane Segati-Rios. I'm the International Advisor for Strategic Projects at Araucária Foundation in Brazil. It's from Paraná State. It's a state funding agency, so maybe you don't have that idea, but in Brazil you have the national funding agencies called CAPES and CNPq, but we also have the state funding agencies to potentialize the development of science and innovation. So in Paraná, that's just below São Paulo State, it's Araucária. So we have a very strategic project, part of the government, that establish strategic areas for the development of science and innovation, and the Araucária Foundation is the responsible for doing that, having the sponsorship for different kinds of projects. Who we are in Paraná. So you can see here on the map, we are located in the southern region in Brazil, just below São Paulo State. So it's a very privileged location because we have a border with 2 other countries, that's Argentina and Paraguay. So that gives us lots of access to the Mercosul market. Besides that, Paraná is considered the state with the 4 highest GBT in Brazil, the second largest technological innovation hub in the country, also considered the best investment strategy for South America, according to the Financial Times, and the highest agricultural productivity and the second produced of grains in the country. Just to have an idea, we are ranked in the 3rd place to be the leaders of the most innovative states in the country. We have a very strategic plan for the development of the state, as we have a huge variation depending on the region. So we distribute for us to have a strategic projects. We divided the state in 9 different regions for the development of science, technology, and innovation. And also we have 12 thematic science, technology, and innovation ecosystem. So climate change, agriculture is one of them. So it impacts differently depending on the region we want to promote the local development. Okay, so our ecosystem is composed by our universities and also our startups and research centers. So just in Paraná, we have 7 state universities, 4 federal universities, and 12 private institutions. And regarding these ecosystems, Araucaria Foundations give the sponsorship for all of them to develop projects. We have around, just considering the public institutions, state and federal ones, we have around 24,000 PhD researchers, 21,000 master researchers, and around 500,000 students. So this is our ecosystem, and it's very well distributed all over the state. Besides that, we have also our innovation environments. Our innovation environments includes the universities because our startups begins their process inside our universities and also in some research centers, and they are very similar to the distributions of our universities. We foster science, technology, and innovation Araucaria Foundation, considering 3 main points. The first one is our digital platform that was developed to access all this network of researchers, all this network of collective intelligence for us to develop our strategy. So we call iAraucaria. It's a digital platform that gives access to all the information we need to develop project in science, technology, and innovation. Besides that, we have a route. We have our route 2040 that give us a study according to those ecosystem regions and main thematics for the development to better project the future for our planning for the development of science, technology, and innovation. And we have the new research and development cooperation network that's very similar to the clusters. We have a network of researchers, and they partner with other institutions, other countries, or other industries, and we support them financially to develop their innovation depending on the thematic they are interested in. So in our state, we have defined, according to the Science, Technology, and Innovation Council, for this governmental term, the priority areas for development. And innovation applies to all of them. So they are society, economy, education, smart cities, biotech and health technology, agro-industry, renewable and sustainable energy, and all of them has to consider digital transformation and sustainable development. The intellectual property, that's the one that I mentioned, using our platform, Araucaria, give us the access to all the information regarding our researchers. So for example, regarding artificial intelligence, we have around 1,400. Regarding renewable energy, we have around 700. Agricultural and agribusiness are around 7,000. Sustainable development, around 4,000. So all this collective intelligence, they are available for Araucaria Foundation to develop strategic projects with our other partners. Regarding the NAPIs, that's our cluster. It's our main tool for the development for innovation, they state. We have around 50 and we support all of them. So here we can highlight, for example, the NAPI that's similar to the cluster that I just mentioned: food and territory, biodiversity, artificial intelligence in agriculture. So we have information about all of them. They are composed around from 100 researchers to 300 researchers. They connect with the industry, they connected with the public and the private sector, and they also have other co-funding associations. I bring here some example, just the climate energy NAPI, just for you to have an idea of how it works. So this NAPI, this group of researchers, they work specifically in aiming to qualify the climate impacts and reduce risks through the scientific, technological, and innovation-based projects. So the main goals has to do with the training high-level scientists, technological and innovation personnel in climate change, identifying forecasts event of climate change, develop an inventory about black carbon emissions in our state, in Paraná state, promote interactions considering climate change, agricultural, biodiversity, and also forests. In addition to that, communicate results to our society to bring results and to make them conscious about how they need to succeed in future and modern societies, and contribute to public policies, the development of public policies and actions for mitigation and reliance in rural and urban areas. So investments regarding this specific NAPI, this specific cluster, consider the involvement of our universities. So we have here both state and federal universities, and they have the commitment to develop events. They receive scholarships. They also develop indicators to better evaluate the results. So specifically with this NAPI, for example, our Arcadia Foundation invests around $600,000 US. So we have around 50 clusters, and the investment is similar to all of them. In terms of investments, at Arcadia Foundation co-fund other initiatives like Belmont Forum, that was already mentioned here, on forests specifically, but we also partner with other countries and institutions, industries, and we co-fund different kinds of opportunities. Another example that I'd like to bring here is the doctoral school on the sustainable development territorial based on the Capricorn axis. This is a multilateral project that considers all the countries based on the Capricorn axis that has the aim to invest, to develop investigation on sustainable territorial development. So we consider that as an international collective intelligence to co-produce and interoperability of the territory. So we also consider the 5 Ps, the planet, people, prosperity, peace, and partnership, as part of the project. And we highlight all the goals of the 2030 agenda. So it was launched in 2022, the chair, and as part of the chair, we launched the doctoral school, having as the main aim to integrate and join this international scientific researching, having as its main theme the frontier of the knowledge of the sustainable development, territorial development. The reference is the geographical location of the Capricorn axis, comprising the countries like South Africa, South America, Africa, Australia, and Polynesia. So the contexts that we consider are the climate change, new technical organizations post-pandemic, new geopolitical contexts, in addition to digital transformation. So it was a collective work, a collective contribution. So we decided collectively all the definitions, the partner institutions, how could be the governance, the activities, all the research lines, and the offer and validation of all the activities that comprise this network. So we have lots of institutions, not just from Paraná State, but also from different states in Brazil. We have institutions from Argentina, Chile, Paraguay, France, Australia, and from South Africa. We want to expand, of course, and we want also to open for associate partners, like G-STIC could be very welcome to be an associate partner as other funding agencies from here. So in terms of investments, Araucaria Foundation has the primary investments in having this network together by launching public calls and investing in priority key meetings for the different partners to better evaluate and propose joint activities for this network. But we also are working with multilateral financing from those countries, considering both state or provincial funding agencies, but also national funding agencies, so that we could have multilateral projects going on in this initiative. So that was some examples and the introduction and presentation of our funding agency and some impacts we have considering the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your introduction. Then I'd really like to invite all the speakers to the stage for a short, let's say, panel discussion. I try to keep, let's say, the time in the event within and finalize the event around 1 o'clock. Maybe we will go a little bit over time, but I really try to guarantee that the event will end in time. Thank you all for already introducing yourself. I will maybe already start with the last speaker. Especially I noticed that there's a lot of Brazilian but also international experiences from, let's say, the work that you do. But very specifically, how do you see, for an African perspective, which perspective of which transferable lessons could be learned from your experiences that might be interesting from an African context to design inclusive, scalable, and context-sensitive scientific and innovation programs?
Okay. So thank you. So as I just mentioned, so Araucaria Foundation is a state, like a provincial funding agency, but we're very open for international partnerships, mainly South Africa, considering some initiatives like the doctoral school, focus on the sustainable development of the territory. So in terms of scaling up, for example, the doctoral school, we have lots of initiatives partnering with other funding agencies and other industries that impacts on the development of the sustainable goals. So we see that we can partner, exchanging the best experiences from our impact, and together work to scale up that so that we could have more, so that we could strengthen this partnership and work on benefit of the market with our outcomes.
Thank you. Maybe I don't know whether you're also from Belmont Forum has some additions to the question?
Again, it was about scaling.
No, it's indeed more, let's say, the lessons learned from your perspective in a specific African context and a scientific base, let's say,
yes.
definition of early stage project and portfolio design.
Okay, yes. Portfolio design. So, some advice I imagine our researchers from Belmont Forum would give. Those already having been active here in South Africa and been South African researchers, is the importance of that stakeholder engagement. And when we say stakeholder, again, let me just define that term. It can be communities, community engagement. What is their need? And really, instead of, and I know because I've been in the seat of academics, we are experts in our area, right? And we want to bring our expertise to something. But it's important to flip the script. It's what are the problems that need to be solved, and how can I use my expertise or my scientific way of thinking, my evaluative brain, to help find the right answers for this community. And I think that is the best advice I can give for any researcher out there. And then it can also be stakeholders, could be NGOs or business, innovators, right? I think you mentioned talking with the private sector. The private sector, you're looking for things that are ready to go and to be marketed up. And if you have that mindset, the researchers do from the beginning, then you're likely to be successful in actually solving a problem.
Perfect, thank you. I want to align it a little bit with the presentation that you gave. Indeed, it's very interesting to include already from the beginning with the grassroots initiatives. You spoke on the co-design with funders, how to align basically those two, let's say, the national innovation agendas combined with the grassroots ambition from a private perspective or from the community perspective into the co-design of your project definition and your portfolio definition.
Thank you for that. So within Grand Challenges Africa, as I presented, already we have the Grand Challenges country, national countries that have joined. And one of the things that we noted is for it to be sustainable, we needed to be embedded in a hosted government institution. So a lot of these Grand Challenges national are based within the national councils of science and technology in the various countries. And within that, then, we are aligned in terms of what are the national priorities of that country. For us as Science for Africa, I already presented, we do health, agriculture, and climate, environment. However, we find that within the national strategies, there are aspects within energy, education, and they are free to support in terms of those various aspects to that. I think one of the competitive advantages that we provide within this platform is the aspect of we're able to pool together funding as a group, and even offer more visibility of that level of the funding. There are also opportunities when it comes to capacity building. We treat the researchers that we are funding within a community of practice, and that is how then they're able to collaborate and apply for even bigger funding opportunities at that. I'll also add that there is a publication in terms of this model and how we have been able to match the funding with government, the case study of Rwanda and Malawi, that I'd be happy to share. Would anyone be interested in that?
Thank you very much. Also maybe aligned with, I don't know whether the speaker online is still available or can hear us. Otherwise, I was also very interested in the presentation that you gave, a little bit aligned with the answer that we already have given. What role in the bigger programs that have been designed do feasibility studies, but also technical due diligence and demonstration pilots play in the validating of this financing project that, for example, you are doing? And do you see any, let's say, extra roles also for smaller donors to also step into, let's say, the bigger impact ambitions that, for example, organization as CITCN has, to focus also more on this, let's say, first and early stage seed funding mechanisms?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm still there. Thank you so much for the question. Actually, yes, pre-feasibility analysis are critical before piloting. The CTCN does pre-feasibility analysis, and let me give you a very concrete and real, actual example. The country of Senegal came to us wondering whether floating solar panel could help them to improve some of the energy cuts that they face, and in a specific region for a specific community of women working on fishing products. Nobody has the answer to this. So before entering into pilot, we will start with the pre-feasibility analysis, trying to, this pre-feasibility analysis is going to intend to respond to all these questions. Is it feasible? Does it make social sense? Does it make economical sense? Does it make financial sense? Who would be able to co-fund this kind of projects? Who is interested in co-financing, in scaling up, in leveraging potentially? So we are in this process of for the moment, bidding and soon implementation. But yes, only when we have this pre-feasibility, when we have a potential architecture of the system, when we know more or less what's the energy that could be produced, what would be the impact for these women and these communities, what would be the impact, what would be the cost, what would be the return on investment, what would be this and what would be that, then only there we will be able to say, okay, let's sit with other donors and do a pilot. Yeah. So indeed, pre-feasibility analysis are, and all these pre-surveys are very important. And actually, the CTCN was it's 10 years that the CTCN has been created, and in the last 10 years we have done much more enabling environment and feasibility studies than piloting. Actually, we are transitioning now to piloting because the countries have a better maturity, a better understanding of what should be done, how it should be done, on what, and we are able, thanks to all this background, to start piloting things. But if you don't know what works, what doesn't work, it will never. You cannot move to piloting. The same occurs with agrivoltaic, for example. We have many countries in Africa wondering whether agrivoltaic is a solution. Well, it depends. It depends where. It depends for what crops. It depends what are the temperatures there, and what is the. It depends on many factors that you need to estimate and value based on the very specific context. So yes, pre-feasibility and the architecture of the system is very important when it comes to sustainability of the system, because we are working on such small scale pilots. Having both the agencies like the EU delegation, the UN agency on the ground, the G-STIC, the IFT, but as well the local banking institutions, as well as the private sector, is very mandatory in order to make sure that it's not going to stay only a very small pilot at very small scale, but that we will be able to scale it up so that it has a real impact in both adaptation and mitigation side whenever it's a cross-cutting project. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for the answer. Maybe a more generic question. It's more in the phase of the, let's say, the changing, let's say, global, orientation that currently is happening. How are your organization, and also looking a little bit to UK Pact, is how you are preparing to uphold or at least scale your impact in the face of this rapid changing world, in a tendency of reducing international solidarity and support, especially in the phase that in the, let's say, reducing amount of bilateral programs, maybe also the more safer projects maybe only get be funded. And how do you, let's say, arm yourself in that danger to step only in those quick and easy wins, rather that maybe the bigger impact can be found in the more challenging, let's say, projects?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I mean, it's a space that has to quickly evolve because funding is scarce. So I think with the demise of USAID and the decreasing UK funding also, because not only is USAID no more, but our funding is decreasing, we're having to, I think, engage more with other funders. So we find ourselves talking with the likes of GIZ to make sure that we are not funding the same things. So duplication has to decrease. We have to also think about it from a programmatic perspective to say, what does the country need? If there are programs and there are areas in which our funding could unlock innovation, we would rather than play in the areas where other funders are not playing. And I think being government-led for us is also very important, making sure that we are responding to what government is needing, because I think in order for this agenda to be scaled, the climate agenda in the South African space, we should let government lead, and we should support the government efforts as opposed to trying to pull away efforts to other areas. And I think there's room for, in piloting what government is wanting to lead, for private sector to follow. So I think for us it's the collaboration with other funders and also prioritizing what's ready for implementation, as I said earlier on.
Thank you. And how is it maybe the point of view for more the foundations where also private funding is, let's say, collected? How do you also strive yourself, or at least arm yourself to this also declining global solidarity? Are there also some other orientation in terms of developing your projects and your grassroots projects? Because I also saw on your slide USAID as one of your key donors. Of course, that's a decline. I assume that's a big question also for the organization or the foundation. How do you deal with this let's say new tendency of the last couple of months?
Yeah. So within the various global funders, yes, USAID was a very big blow in terms of the funding support that would come within the Grand Challenges family. One of the discussion points within the family of the network is how then we can also open it up in terms of diversifying the various funding, inviting more potential foundations, philanthropies. I also mentioned that even within government, we've only managed within Africa to get to 8 out of 54 African countries. So also how can we leverage on government aligning to this family of network and the opportunities that it does offer to them so that they can join and be part of that. So that is one of our strategies to that. But also we do participate in various funders forums as well, where we are able to see, before we launch a call, who else is interested in this piece of work. I was mentioning it to a colleague just now. Next year we are doing a global grand challenge in climate and health to be announced in January 2026. And within that, we have done a lot in terms of mobilizing that call to ensure that anyone who's interested in this piece of work joins us early on. The other advantage that we have, it's multi-phased. So even if you're not able to join in the initial phase of 2026, there'll be another phase that you can join after that. So getting that word out in terms of here's an opportunity, you do not have to do it by yourself. Let us collaborate, let us work together and utilize the little resources that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We had some other questions, but I see the time's always almost running out, so I'd like to provide the last, let's say, closing keynote speech, and I think therefore you already can sit down. Thank you very much for your contributions. But I think for the last speaker, I'd like to invite Mrs. Hunda Magalaka. She's a public and private sector partnership specialist of CSIR, the host of this event, where she develops and manages strategic collaboration that strengthens the organization in role in driving socio-economic progress. She supports CSIR 9 research and innovation clusters by facilitating multi-stakeholder partnerships across the academia, government, industry, and international agencies. She is a member of the steering committee of the Science Diplomacy Capital for Africa initiative, fostering collaborative between scientists, policymakers, and diplomats. And she also represents CSIR within the Oudanepat Center of Excellence in Science, Technology, and Innovation. She holds a master's degree in engineering from the University of Cape Town and a Bachelor of Science from the University of Witwatersrand. Thank you. It's for you.
Thank you, Martin. Good afternoon, distinguished speakers, colleagues and partners. I don't like being in this position, the last person just between, lunch and whatnot. I'm also looking forward to that lunch, but I'll try to sort of shorten my speech into 5 minutes or so. I feel very honored to really sort of provide this closing remarks during this important discussion at the CSIR 80th and G-STIC Pretoria Conference. And I think this session is one that speaks to Africa's future, how we fund and scale climate smart innovation. As Martin mentioned, my name is Hunadi Mokhalaka. I stand in front of you wearing two hats. I'm the CSR Public and Private Sector Specialist responsible for identifying, developing and managing partnerships both locally and internationally. But also I am part of the Science Diplomacy Capital for Africa Steering Committee member, which I will be focusing on today. So as mentioned, I'm speaking to you today on behalf of the Science Diplomacy Capital for Africa, in short, SDCFA. This is an initiative that advances science diplomacy as a practical tool for Africa's sustainable development and global engagement. It was launched in July 2022, and the SDCFA is a partnership between the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, as well as the City of Tshwane, which hosts both institutions. So as SDCFA, our vision is to make Tshwane the African hub for science diplomacy by connecting the continent's largest diplomatic community with its science and innovation institutions in the continent. So SDCFA exists to, one, facilitate international research and innovation partnership, particularly aligned with the SDGs, and two, to promote open, inclusive science diplomacy, and lastly, to amplify African voices in global policy and innovation conversations. So at SDCFA's core, it's science diplomacy that connects technical science expertise with local and foreign policy so that we can turn collaboration into impact. And SDCFA has mainly three focus areas, the first one being facilitating multilateral collaboration. So under this focus area, we align Africa's science with Agenda 2063, Science, Technology and Innovation Strategy for Africa. Excuse me, Dumiso, can you please switch off my alarm? Sorry about that. So we align Africa's science with Agenda 2063, as well as Science, Technology and Innovation Strategy for Africa 2034, and lastly, the United Nations SDGs. So we work with global partners like the African Union, the European Union, the Geneva Science Diplomacy Anticipator, GESTA, as well as the International Network for Governmental Science Advice, INGSA, in ensuring that Africa co-creates solutions, not just consumes them. And the second focus, which is on bridging research and policy. So through platforms such as some of you may be aware, the Science Forum South Africa, which is taking place annually, and this year it's taking place on the 24th to the 28th of November 2025. It is its 10th year anniversary. And as well as for the first time on the African continent, we will be hosting the World Conference of Science Journalists from the 1st to the 5th of December 2025. So with these two examples, we basically, besides just bringing in the technical expertise and the policymakers and your diplomats as Science Forum, through the Science Journalist Conference, what we aim to do is that while we develop the policies, we develop the innovations and so forth, how do we communicate those to every individual? Hence, we brought in this World Conference of Science Journalists, which is the custodian of the World Federation of Science Journalism, to basically come and engage with the policymakers as well as the scientists in communicating some of these great innovations that you've been talking about as speakers today. So we will be basically connecting your scientists, policymakers, and diplomats to turn the knowledge that is created into action. And lastly, the focus area on building capacity. So here we've got quite a number of initiatives that we run, but just to mention two because of time, we annually host what we call the Science Diplomacy Masterclass, which is basically an idea to develop Africa's next generation of science diplomacy leaders. We host that as a side event to the science forum that I mentioned earlier on. And this year, we partnered with, as mentioned, GESTA, the Geneva Science Diplomacy Anticipator. They are developing a global curriculum on anticipator leadership, and they identified South Africa through SDCFA as one of its partners to deliver what they call anticipator leadership weeks. So we just successfully delivered one of those weeks together with other 5 countries across the globe, and basically we partnered with GESTA here to host this week, where we convened policymakers, scientists, and innovators from across 14 countries, mainly from Africa, but also from other parts of the globe, to engage on how emerging technologies such as quantum computing, as you know, neurotechnology, as you might have heard as well, and climate engineering linked to the topic today, in how they are reshaping our world. You know, what is being discussed, what is being innovated that will impact us in the next 5, 10, 15, 25 years from now, and how are we going to be basically reacting to those science breakthroughs. You would have seen, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, I'm sure you saw what happened during COVID, right? And these are some of the things that we want to proactively respond to and not react to. So in terms of that week, we had about 40 participants, and some of them were members of South African Parliament, staff members. We had policymakers from different departments. We had NGOs represented, and those 40 participants were equipped with the knowledge and the know-how in terms of how to respond to some of these breakthroughs that are coming out from the labs, those that are still in discussion, and we mainly based this on the GESTA Science Breakthrough, which is available online. And one of the areas that is not yet part of the GESTA Science Breakthrough radar, but it's one of the knowledges that we have, you know, in Africa, the indigenous knowledge systems. We incorporated that into the program because it is a base knowledge for most of these domains that you see coming out of the Science Breakthrough radar. And then just invite you, tomorrow we're hosting the Science Diplomacy Capital for Africa, Diplomatic Circle for Africa, here at the CSIR ICC as part of the CSIR 80 and G-STIC Pretoria Conference. This session tomorrow, it will be bringing together ambassadors, the African Union's Development Agency, NEPAD, policymakers, as well as heads of research and technology organizations across Africa to basically drive continental collaboration under STISA 2034. So it's basically science diplomacy in action, where we are connecting missions, embassies, scientists, and institutions to co-shape Africa's science and technology's future. And just linked to today's session on building the climate innovation pipeline, I think that deeply aligns with SDCFA's mission. Across Africa, as you know, innovative climate solutions from early warning systems to climate smart agriculture, they often stall at a pilot stage due to fragmentation, high risk early stage finance. So with science diplomacy, it provides the bridge that connects your innovators and scientists, your policymakers and financiers, as well as your diplomatic networks that can mobilize global cooperation, starting here locally. So through SDCFA, we would like to work with everyone that is in the room and those that will be watching online to encourage shared funding schemes between governments and development partners. And secondly, to support the building of innovation platforms that will help validate and de-risk technologies. And lastly, to support the policy frameworks that will enable scalability and attract investment. So in essence, science diplomacy here can turn innovation pipelines into investment pipelines. And to everyone in this room, funders, diplomats, researchers, and policymakers, we invite you as SDCFA to collaborate through the SDCFA network to connect your climate innovation efforts continent-wide through our network. And secondly, to embed science diplomacy principles in funding models to align with Africa's priority. And thirdly, to engage with SDCFA through our diplomatic circle tomorrow and other 2025 events to move from discussion to delivery. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Vito as well for providing me this opportunity to talk to you today. And I look forward to building this future with many of you in the room. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Unari, to really, I think, summarize perfect a little bit the goal of this session. So I'd like to thank you all the participations the participation of all of you, and also the participants on your presentations and your answers during the panel discussions. Unari, for the last closing words, thank you very much. And I'd like to, let's say, go for the lunch and enjoy your meals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert.